Welcome to another episode of the Gull Mouth Action podcast, where we take a look at all the latest goings on at Brighton Hove Albion, Crawley Town and Sport in Sussex. I'm Matt Poll, and this week I'm joined by Brighton Hove Albion writer Sam Morton, Crawley Town expert Mark Dunford and Sussex sport guru Steve Bone. The Seagulls got back to winning ways with a fabulous 4-1 win over fierce rivals Crystal Palace on Saturday. We'll pick over the bones of a superb Premier League victory for a Roberto De Zerbi side and take a look at all the latest news from Crawley Town and non-league football in Sussex. You can read all the stories we were talking about with videos and pictures online at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And you can check out other great videos on shotstv.com and Freeview channel 276. But Brighton scored 3 first-half goals as they beat rival Crystal Palace comfortably in the Premier League to heap pressure on Eagles boss Roy Hodgson. Sam Morton, how good were Albion on the day? It seemed to be a perfect response from the debacle at Luton Town.
Absolutely that. It was the perfect response. I think we've seen it a few times, really, that Brighton have had a poor defeat and they've responded brilliantly. I think we saw it at Everton, against Everton last season. They lost heavily, and in the following game they beat Arsenal at the Emirates and effectively ended their challenge for the title at the time. So they've done a similar kind of thing this time. Obviously a really, really poor performance and defeat at Luton, but they were pretty much back to their best against Crystal Palace, really. Obviously Palace were very poor. They didn't have their key players in Eze at all, when Elise came on bizarrely for the second half when he wasn't fit to start. But he was brought on when they were 3-0 down, and that seemed like a very bizarre decision. But it was really excellent for Brighton, and I think De Zerbi said the win started after Tuesday night's defeat at Luton, and you could really see that, really. I think no one was more disappointed than the captain, Lewis Dunk, after Tuesday, and he was the one to open the scoring after 2 minutes with a header from a corner. And it really did help to settle those early nerves they probably had coming into the game. Obviously, it was a really good atmosphere, so to get that early goal was crucial. And Jack Hinshelwood made it 2-0 with a brilliant header from a Tariq Lamptey cross, and they only had to wait about a minute later, not even that, literally straight from the restart. Pascal Gross got the assist for Facundo Buonanotte to make it 3-0, and that really did send the crowd wild at that point. I think the home fans were absolutely loving it and taunting the Palace fans, and it was a real party atmosphere at that point, and they really never looked back. And Palace did obviously get a goal back in the second half through Mateta, and it was a brilliant header, a real moment of quality from them. But it didn't affect Brighton at all, and they managed to seal the game with probably the game's best goal, I think, with Danny Welbeck. A brilliant back heel in a 1-2 with João Pedro, and of course he was never going to miss in the form that he's in as well. So yeah, really good afternoon for Brighton, and much needed as well to bounce back after that defeat.
I suppose the only negative from that game came off the pitch, didn't it, Sam? Tell us a little bit about the off-field incidents that made the headlines this week before Palace Brighton. Yeah,
that's obviously not what we want to see, and I think we saw something probably a bit worse. It was at West Brom versus Wolves, where it really did descend into chaos. It wasn't quite on those extreme levels, but it's still something we don't want to see. And I think you can kind of understand words being exchanged and a bit of kind of maybe banter or some arguing between the fans. It's fine, but violence is where you draw the line. I think that's obviously never acceptable. And we heard that a police officer was injured by a pyrotechnic thrown as a missile. So that's completely not on at all, and hopefully those that were responsible will be dealt with accordingly, and we just don't want to see that in football.
Yeah, so I saw Eddie Mitchell obviously sent us some footage of the police presence in Brighton, and we've put it up on our YouTube channel at SussexWorld and got lots of comments on that. But it's just amazing that it still happens, isn't it? And just seeing so many kids or child or adult child, man, boys, whatever you want to call them, all with their hoods up with balaclavas on and that as well. It's so brave, so very, very brave. Oh, it just winds me up a tree. Something's got to be done to deal with it, but I don't know what can be done because it's so tribal, isn't it? And yeah. Well.
I suppose that the only thing you could say, you can't really punish the club because was it 7 arrests made? So then you look at it the other way. Is it fair to punish the club when it is only a small minority? But I completely understand what you say, Mark. Something does need to be done about it, doesn't it?
Yeah. But if we could solve that, somebody would have done it by now, wouldn't we? So
well, yeah, absolutely. Going back to matters on the pitch, the transfer window may have slammed shut last week. Brighton have still been busy in the market, snapping up a coveted teenage attacker. Tell us a little bit more about this out of January transfer window deal, Sam Morton, and how big of a coup is this for Brighton Hove Albion?
Yeah, so it's Ibrahim Osman, and it's an exciting one for Brighton. It's another teenager. I think they have signed quite a lot of teenagers in the January transfer window, and he's just the latest one that will be joining in the summer. And he was a name that had been linked during January, but obviously they couldn't, or maybe they weren't thinking of getting over the line at that point, and were maybe keeping tabs on him for the future. And obviously it has come around really quickly, and he's a forward player that. Apparently a bid, according to David Ornstein from The Athletic, a bid's been accepted worth around £16.6 million. And according to Fabrizio Romano, he was really close to joining West Ham. So, yeah, I think that West Ham were one of a number of clubs that were interested in him, but Brighton have come in and got the deal done, which just again shows the attraction and the pull of Brighton, really. And what might have helped as well is that he is following the exact same path as Simon Adingra. So he was playing for Nordsjælland in the Danish Super League, and he before that played for was at the Right to Dream Academy, which is exactly what Adingra did. He followed the exact same path. So that's interesting, really, and could just show kind of a well-trodden route that someone who has already done, has been successful, has really made a name for himself in the Premier League, and is obviously now starring for his country in the Ivory Coast as well. So I think Osman's maybe looked at that and think Brighton's the perfect place to go and to really make his name and play in the Premier League. And it's an exciting one for Brighton. And the more players like this they sign, and the more successful they are, the more often they can get these signings done and mean that they are the place to go rather than some other top flight teams. And yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing how he gets on. And it'll be interesting to see if he does go straight into the Brighton squad, or if, like Adingra, he is loaned out initially, which is something that Brighton do like to do to give him a bit of first-team experience initially. So, yeah, an interesting one, and exciting that Brighton have managed to get it done.
Meanwhile, this Saturday sees the Seagulls travel to 5th place Tottenham. How do you see this one going, Sam? I have a feeling it might be quite an entertaining game by all accounts.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday to see it. And yeah, really looking forward to what should be an action-packed game. I think there's obviously a bit of controversy at the stadium last year involving VAR and all sorts of things. So hopefully we don't have those kind of things going on, but some goals will be nice. And Spurs are definitely improving again, because they had a superb start to the season. They had a bit of a decline, and they're starting to pick up a bit of form again. And obviously Richarlison can't stop scoring. He netted a brace at Goodison Park. It's probably a disappointing result. They obviously drew 2-2 with a last-minute equaliser, which obviously showed a frustrating result for Spurs that they'll be looking to bounce back from. But as I mentioned, Richarlison hasn't been able to stop scoring, really. He's had 9 goals in his past 8 league games. And he'd only scored 2 goals in his first 39 games for Spurs. So he really has found the recipe for goals by the looks of it. And obviously he's going to be backed up by Son as well, who's going to be returning from the Asia Cup after South Korea were beaten by Jordan. That was obviously a shock result. So he'll be back, which is a bit of a blow to Brighton as well. But Brighton will have Karim Matoma back with them, who was knocked out of the Asia Cup as well with Japan. So that's a real boost. And we saw Ansu Fati come on as a sub against Crystal Palace. So we could always see him make a start or even an appearance off the bench once again. And it's so good to start getting these players back, really. And obviously it won't be long before they get Adingra back from the Ivory Coast, who are still in the competition. They made the final. So I think it's good I think Brighton will be pleased to see players do well for their countries and progress. But I think in the situation they're in with the players they've had out injured and unavailable, I think the sooner they get them back, the better, really. And especially Matoma, who's probably not had the best of seasons, but he's still such a key player, such an important player, and can hopefully make a real difference against Spurs.
I watched when Brighton battered Spurs over Christmas period, wasn't it? It was between Christmas and New Year, I think it was. Do you think, Sam, there's going to be a chance that there could be a reverse result? They're two teams that have they can 1 week win 4-0, 4-1, and then lose 4-0. There could be a complete change of reverse scoreline, couldn't there, in this one?
It could.
Spurs at home.
It really could, yeah. It's one of those games. It's really impossible to predict how it's going to go, really, because as you say, it really could go either way. And obviously Brighton absolutely battered Spurs at the Amex in December. And it would be lovely if they were able to do that again. But yeah, it's all set up to be a really good game. I think Spurs will be going guns blazing. And Jason Anderson's returned from injury recently as well, so he'll be there and partnered up with Richarlison and Son. I think Van der Ven has also been amazing at centre back since he's returned from injury. So he's I'm really looking forward to that battle actually with João Pedro, who obviously is in great form. And I think it's great that Brighton are getting these players back to give Pedro some backup as well, and hopefully it makes a difference.
And does Steve Bone like Tottenham? Does Steve Bone like Tottenham Hotspur?
I don't mind Tottenham actually. They are one of the few teams in the Football League that I don't mind. I can't think I haven't found a reason not to like them. So
they haven't crossed you yet.
They should make the most of that while it lasts.
I must admit that was a very disappointing answer, Steve. But we're going to have to take a quick break. And when we come back, we were talking all things Crawley Town and non-league football in Sussex. Saturday saw Crawley Town lose 2-1 to Morecambe in League 2 at home despite taking the lead. Sum that performance up for us, Mark. I heard a snippet of Scott Lindsay's post-match interview, and it's safe to say he was quite forthright in his assessment of the Reds' performance.
He was, yeah. It was another one of those sort of what's turning out to be a little bit of a typical Crawley performance. Dominate possession, but not having enough shots on target, and then ending up losing, letting in the late goal. And Scott Lindsay afterwards, he just said his team were far too nice. They didn't want to attack the game. Looked like they didn't really want to go out and win the game. He actually called them unprofessional as well. There was a lot of he didn't call them all unprofessional. He said it was we're not professional enough. Sorry, I don't want to misquote him. But he thinks it's a mental thing, and he said the intensity to go and win a game is just not there. So it's he was quite very disappointed after Saturday game. I mean, it was like the Salford game. It was a game that everybody thought Crawley should win at home against a team that were lower than them in the league. But he's said at the end he's not going to roll over and make this season Peter to nothing. I won't stand for that. So I'm chatting to him this afternoon for the press conference for the Crewe game. So I'm going to ask him about that and how he actually changes that, because it's happened too many times this year where they've played well, dominated, but just haven't got the result they deserve. So something definitely needs to change within the players' mindset, I think.
Well, from what you were saying to us last week, Mark, it seemed as if that Scott Lindsay and the club were kind of potentially due to make a couple of additions after the January window closed. Were they successful in their attempts to lure those players to the Broadfield Stadium?
No, they weren't. So on the day they signed Jeremy Kelly and Mustafa Alagunju. And then we sort of got hints here and there. Like I said, the BBC even announced that they'd signed Donovan Wilson from Grimsby. But it never came off. And I'd heard mixed sort of reasons why. One was Grimsby were looking for a striker of their own. And if they didn't get that, it meant that they weren't going to let Donovan Wilson go. But David Artell, the Grimsby manager, last week was quoted on BBC saying basically they did everything their end for Donovan Wilson to move on loan to Crawley, but Crawley didn't get the paperwork done. And it sounded like a bit of a dig because he said we did all our bit at 8:30 p.m. I don't know what happened at Crawley kind of thing. So it'd be interesting again just to ask Scott Lindsay about that and how frustrating it is he wasn't able to get that. The one position he said they really did need, and that is a backup to Danilo Orsi. So, a bit of a shame, really, because, if something does happen to Orsi, touch wood, it doesn't. What do they do? I mean, you've got Clyde Lolos, who can play up top, probably. But there's not many other options for Crawley. And that is the one thing they're lacking is scoring goals. They had 3 or 4 shots on goal compared to Morecambe's 7 on Saturday, but they had 70% possession. So it's fine being in possession, but it's got to have some end product, doesn't it? And it's a shame they did miss out on Donovan Wilson and whoever the other person was that was rumoured about that they were going to get, who was going to be up top as well. So big shame. Well,
they'll have a chance to put those wrongs right on Saturday when they travel to Crewe Alexandra before entertaining Walsall on Tuesday evening. How do you see these games going, Mark?
Crewe is a tough old trip. Crawley haven't beaten them in their last 7 games, I don't think, or 6 or 7 games. And they're 5th in League 2. I think they've scored third or fourth most amount goals in League Two, but they also concede goals. And Crawley's last few away results have been really good. So it could be one. It'd be one of those ones where Crawley go up there and beat them, and go against all the form and odds and everything. But it's a really tough trip for them. If they can get a point out of it, it'll be a really good result, I think, considering what they've done in the last couple of weeks. But Walsall is a game, another one like Morecambe and Salford, that Crawley will be expected to win. But yeah, with their current form and that. But if Scott Lindsay's changed things around this week, his messaging has got to be key this week in training and that, considering what he said after the Morecambe game last week. So I think, if they can get 4 points out of these 2 games, it will be a really good result for Crawley. But they need to get back to winning ways as soon as possible, especially at home as well. So Tuesday night is a big, big game for them, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so if you look at the table, if you look at the table, they're not actually that far off, are they, Crawley?
No, they're still really close. It's still really tight. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think they've got a game in hand on 7th place, Notts County. So if you win that, you're only 2 points below the playoffs. So I think, if they put a few wins together, I think League Two has always been that way, isn't it? If you put a few wins together, you suddenly rise up the table. But definitely this year, even more so, it's all very, very congested. I think Crawley definitely, if they get a few wins together, are looking really good again.
Yeah, if they can get 6 points in the next 2 games, win away, and then we'll start a home win, right back in it, and the fans will be wondering, oh, no, what was the problem, sort of thing. But I don't know if you're going to ask Steve Bone, Walsall and Crewe, Steve.
I've had many trips to both with my team down the years. Can't think of too many highlights from either of them, to be honest. But I'm sorry to disappoint you. I'm not slagging any teams off this week, am I? It's not. Not living up to my reputation. Sorry, I'll do better next week.
Meanwhile, we now know the lineup of this year's Sussex Senior Cup semi-finals. It's safe to say there have been some massive shocks in this season's tournament, to say the least, isn't there, Steve? Who are the final 4, for those who don't know, and who do you think we'll be seeing in the final at the Amex in May?
Yeah, it's been quite refreshing this year. It's been a very open competition. Normally, you get to the last 4 and you're looking at who's going to be in the final, and you would normally still have Brighton under 21s in there, which, no disrespect to them, I always think is a little bit of an anticlimax when they get to the final, because you want 2 club sides in there. You would sometimes expect a Crawley or even a Worthing or an Eastbourne Borough to be in there because they're the higher ranked sides across Sussex. They've all gone, and we have got 2 sides from step 3, 1 from step 4 and 1 from step 5 in the semis. We've got end of Feb, we'll see Horsham against Stenning in the first semi-final. Both semi-finals will be at Lancing on the neutral ground, by the way. So Horsham against Stenning. Horsham will be strong favourites there, going quite well in the Isthmian Premier. They've got a bit of a backlog of fixtures, so they are going to be playing twice a week now for most of the season, but they will fancy themselves against Stenning. And then a couple of weeks after that, quite an intriguing one, actually, Hastings against Littlehampton. And the reason for that is that Littlehampton hammered Bognor, who play a division above them, 6-1 the other night, which I think maybe a few people might have predicted that Littlehampton would get through on their own ground against Bognor, but I don't think anybody would have predicted 6-1. It was an absolute rout. 4 goals in the second half. Bogner's manager has described it as unacceptable, wants them to bounce back quickly. And Littlehampton, they're just, we saw them get to Wembley a couple of years ago, didn't we? So now they'll be dreaming of getting to the Amex, to the final. But up against Hastings, who are also having a good season. So you've got 2 really good semi-finals in prospect, I think.
And we make it a good night out, don't we, going down to watch the Senior Cup. And it's so refreshing to have 4 teams I don't think I've ever seen in the Senior Cup final. So it's always been, like you said, Brighton. I remember 2 years on the trot, Crawley versus Brighton under 21s, and they were 2 worst matches I think I've ever seen live. And so it's so great. And it'd be great. I mean, no disrespect to Hastings and Horsham, it'd be great to have a Littlehampton Stenning final, wouldn't it? It would be great. Just something not completely unexpected at the beginning of the season. Would be great. Why not?
Absolutely.
Well, I was just thinking, I don't know if any of those 4, so I know Horsham and Hastings have probably won it, but I don't know if Littlehampton or Stenning have ever won it off the top of my head.
I think that Littlehampton certainly have. Stenning, we were looking the other day, weren't we, Steve? We were chatting about it, and I think the Stenning have certainly lost in a final, I think, to Crawley.
Oh, blimey.
I think I read that.
It's surprising how many smaller teams have got to the final in years gone by, actually, when you look. But
yeah, St Leonard's has even got there. I mean, St Leonard's, have they got a team? They've won the Senior Cup. So we'll get to the final. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That'd be good to watch.
Because, Peacehaven got there one year, didn't they? And won it quite possibly.
I was there. 10 years ago.
Saunders was in charge of them. Yeah.
Well, yeah, fingers crossed. There is interest. It's, as I say, nice to see 4 different teams who could make it to the final. So best of luck to them. And finally, Steve, there were good wins for our sides in the National League South and Isthmia Premier this week. Who were the standout Sussex performers in those 2 divisions?
Well, it's Worthing again in the National South. Had another good win. Went to Aveley, who are up there in the playoff zone, and won 3-0. A couple more goals for Ollie Pearce, who has scored, I think, twice as many goals as anybody else in that division this season. Got about 23 just in the league. Great week for Horsham in the Isthmian Premier. They've had 2 wins, two away wins at that. They're just closing in on the playoffs. Hastings and Bognor both won last Saturday to strengthen their claims. Both haven't done so well in midweek, obviously. Lewis have had a couple of defeats this week. So it swings and roundabouts, but I think Horsham are the dark horses in that division. Need to watch out for them.
Oh, that'd be good. No, I'd love it if
it's
they went
going well.
Never mind. Allegiances aside, it'd be very good if they went up. But very quickly, score predictions. Saturday, Sam Morton, Spurs at home to Brighton. How do you see that one going? You said it's going to be a tough one to call, so it'd be interesting to hear what you say.
Yeah, I was going to play it safe and go for a draw. A goal fest, I would say.
I thought you were going to say goalless draw then.
No.
Be a goalless draw.
I almost said 3-3, but I think that's probably a bit too many goals. I think 2-2. I'll go with 2-2 draw.
Mark, how do you see that one going?
I was nearly going to go for a 3-3 draw. I'm going to go 3-2 Tottenham. I think Tottenham might just edge it this one. They're just goals galore. Love it. Yeah.
Steve Bone, how do you see that one going?
Similar theme. I'm going Spurs 5, Brighton 2.
All right, Richie Mills. What's going on?
Sorry to Brighton's defence for doubting me.
Moving on to Crawley Town. They're away at Crewe on Saturday. Mark, you said it'd be a tough game. I must admit, I can't see Crawley getting anything out of this.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think a draw would be a really good result, but I think I'm going to go 2-1 Crewe.
Sam Morton, how do you see that one going?
I'm going to be optimistic and say 2-1 Crawley. I noticed that Crawley have got 2 games in hand on Crewe, so maybe that might suggest that Crewe are a bit further ahead than they really are. So I'll say 2-1 Crawley.
Scotland will love you for
that. Do you share Sam's optimism, Steve, for Crawley's trip to Crewe?
No. Sorry. In a word, never easy at Gresty Road, is it? I'm going 3-1 to Crewe.
And finally, very quickly, Crawley home to Walsall. Mark, quick score prediction.
2-0 Crawley, back to winning ways at home.
Sam Morton, how do you see that one going?
1-0. An edgy game, but Crawley will edge it.
And Steve Bone, finally.
I'll keep up the goals and go for 3-2 to Crawley.
Excellent, brilliant stuff. Thank you very much for your time, chaps, as ever. You can catch up with all the latest sports news covering everything we've talked about today at sussexworld.co.uk/sport. And you can watch more excellent videos on shotstv.com and Freeview channel 276. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Cheers, guys.